What if, despite the strength of the evidence in a case, a jury still want to find somebody not guilty? Can they? Yes, they can. It's what our American friends call jury nullification, and we call perverse verdicts. All goes back to the 18th century when two guys, a Mr. Penn and a Mr. Mead, were preaching in the street. At the time, however, the law had quite strict prohibitions on street preaching, especially for sort of non-Church of England establishment things. So they were duly prosecuted. Penn, by the way, is the guy who went off to form Pennsylvania. But before he did that, he was busy getting prosecuted. So they were charged with preaching and causing an unlawful assembly. At the end of the trial, though, the jury came back and said they returned what we call a special verdict. So instead of just saying guilty or not guilty, they said, we find, as a matter of fact, they were out there in the street and they were preaching. And the judge went, yes, and so, what does that? What's your verdict? And they went, oh no, that's all we're doing. Now, they used to be quite common, these what we call special verdicts, where a jury would actually give a list of all the facts as they found them. And then sometimes say, right, we'll leave it up to the judge to apply the law to those facts. I mean, the nearest we get to now is sort of narrative verdicts and inquests. These are quite a common thing. But the judge said, well, okay, you found that, but you have been entrusted to, remind you of your oath, return a true verdict upon the evidence. And if that's your evidence, the true verdict is guilty. Go away and find them guilty. And they went away for a bit, and then they came back and they said, okay, we find it was an unlawful assembly. Right, okay, great, so that means... And they're like, well, no, we're still not saying that. We're still not saying those words. Because there was a lot of sympathy for people. So they said, we can't with a clean conscience actually say these guys should be convicted. The judge wasn't having this. Because his argument was, sometimes this is reported as the judge just didn't like the fact that they, found them not guilty. But it's the fact that they came back and said, all the facts, all the elements of the offence are proved, and they wouldn't find them guilty. But the judge locked them up for 2 days without food, water, or heat. So basically, just like any Crown Court today, actually, with all the facilities there. Eventually, it was just like, this isn't going to happen, is it? So after 2 days, that they were released, but they were all fined for contempt. But one Mr. Bushell said, "I'm not paying the fine. I don't see why I should have to. You can't force me to say guilty if I don't want to." And this all went off to another court, and the court confirmed and said, "Yeah, every English person's right to return a not guilty if that's a matter of their conscience." And that is actually commemorated with a plaque at the Old Bailey. But the interesting thing is, you're not allowed to tell lawyers. We are not allowed to say to juries, "Oh, by the way, doesn't matter what the evidence is, you can still acquit." And it's actually an offence to try and tell specific jurors that. Some lady's been prosecuted because she's holding a sign up outside saying, dear jurors, you have the right to return any not guilty verdict anytime you want. So it's interesting. Me telling you this is all fine because I'm just, actually just giving you a little bit of, legal knowledge. But if I was to stand outside court doing this, and just telling random passers-by, I'd be in a lot of trouble. In America, you get these people wearing T-shirts saying "Ask me about jury nullification," and they do get done if they go into the courts. But yeah, jurors actually have quite a number of powers. Another power that jurors have, which they don't get told, is they can return a not guilty verdict any time after the end of the prosecution case. They don't have to wait for the defence case. If they the prosecution go, right, that's our case, and they think among themselves, you've not reached the required standard, we are not convinced so that we are sure that this person is guilty, we don't need to hear any more about this. Lawyers can make what they call submissions of no case to answer at half-time. And that's quite a common thing we will do. We'll say to the judge, look, you've heard the prosecution case, it doesn't get across the threshold. And the test is, could a properly directed jury convict on that evidence? Which is actually a very low threshold. So as long as all the elements, there's evidence of all the elements of the offence, even if, there's plenty of grounds for arguing that, it's unreliable. That's the defence's job then to undermine that. That's the idea. You can theoretically make an application of no case to answer during the prosecution case before they get to the end. So that's very rare, as you'd imagine. But say, for instance, the star witness was, the victim, or came up and actually the victim said, actually now I can't be sure it was them, or yes, I can see why they might have been acting in self-defense or something like that. Then you would stand up and say, look, what's the point of the rest of this trial? So those are just some powers. But like I say, that's lawyers asking that, and judges can have their own volition say to juries, there's no case to answer. In that case, it's a rather strange procedure because the jury have been impaneled to return the verdict. They have to return the verdict. So the judge literally just points and says, right, congratulations, you're now the foreperson. When I get the clerk to put the charge to you, you just say not guilty, okay? And then usually people look around a bit puzzled and go, yeah, all right. They don't even get to talk among themselves. I've always been intrigued as to what would happen if you had a sort of reverse Bushell's case and somebody said, no, actually, no, we think you did it. But, maybe one day, maybe they'll get a plaque. But, right, speaking of things, if you did like that, please consider clicking the like button and also consider subscribing. Like I say, I'm trying to dig out all these little interesting bits for you about sort of, obscure bits of law. But now you see, if you're ever on a jury, now you actually know that. So, would you be able to tell your fellow jurors? Well, what goes on in the jury room stays in the jury room, generally speaking. But yeah, this is an issue actually as to whether fellow jurors can mention it. No cases on that yet. Don't be the first. Oh, go on then, we'll do a video about it.